That's okay.
Yeah.
Read.
So the hyperachiever really took over. We're busy building the stats. So really, so it has to be a specific depth, and it's got to be width and height and all of that. And working on this in our town, what happens is the shops actually close at certain times, and you can't just get. So suddenly I didn't have all the material to be able to do it. And this is where the hyperachiever totally hijacked me. Because here I have some of the things and I can't go into action. I don't know how to, because I need a few pieces of wood, which I don't have. And absolutely stunning how you just stand there. And I was getting very frustrated. Because now I can't go on because I don't have all the things to complete it. And the whole thing about the hyperachiever is that you've got to be able to finish it and do it well. And now, in my mind, I could not do it well because I couldn't finish it. I knew I was going to be able to finish it. And the other problem is that as I worked it all out, previous, I'd actually cut all the pieces and worked out everything specifically. And I made a mistake. Some of the pieces of wood was like a centimeter too short. And it's not like woodwork in woodwork works in millimeters exactly. It doesn't work on, you can't stretch. If you cut it off, it's gone. And it's this frustration. And my wife is that I'm getting quite angry with myself, which is all hijack mode. Really, it is. I'm totally hijacked. And I think this is also without wanting to say, in when we say you've got to do PQ reps and so forth, then my wife comes and wants to give me advice. Now, this is not, I need to figure this out. Until you go into the mode of the yes and game. Well, yes, perhaps a few things that she's saying is right. Those type of things happen. And it is yes and. And then I started playing the yes and, because when I say something, she says something. And it turned out that why am I so stressed about the 1 centimeter? So the whole contraption is just going to be 1 centimeter shorter or narrow from a 75 centimeters, it's going to be 74.
You're the only person that'll notice that.
Nobody else is going to notice it. Nobody. And it is fascinating how I was hijacked. I could not continue. And then eventually went through the motions, did some PQ reps afterwards. And so for the people that don't know what PQ rep is that it's a short little meditation and you just don't focus on anything other than something body awareness. And it's amazing.
So which ones did you use, Eddie, when you were in that state? What PQ reps did you use?
I actually, well, for a start, I had to listen to my wife's suggestions and that, and then I went outside and I listened to birds. It was really, I heard the birds singing, what that was, and then different sounds, as you go on. And that's what was interesting is that I decided I'm just going to do for a couple of seconds type of thing. It was a deliberate decision. And it turned out that I walked back into the workshop in around 3-4 minutes later. So it was quite a long thing. And I knew exactly what I had to do. And then I didn't, that's the other thing. So now we're putting this whole thing together, and bear in mind, in between all of those, we also have load shedding where we have electricity's been cut off. So you can't work with the tools that you have. And I'm a handyman. I can do things, but I'm not necessarily very good at it. I always say I can do these things. It takes me, somebody else it will take them a quarter of the time that I do. And then we have this frustration with load shedding that kicks in as well. And there's no sense in getting angry. And it is that just calm down and just accept it for what it is. This is a time that you don't have to be struggling with. And this is the one thing that's amazing, is that I would get frustrated because it is load shedding, and after in that 2 hours time, this was the gift for me that I saw in that. It gave me time to think and rethink things without me knowing it. So when the power came on, I could just sit down and start doing it.
Yeah.
The other thing that was amazing, I never got as far as I wanted to get, and it's okay.
Yeah. It's not always the things with projects. Well, that's what I find. I never get as much done as I think I'm going to get done. Yeah. But I like the fact that you said, and that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just fine. Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, I like as well the example of, so you know, when you were able to access the awareness that you were hijacked, because if that doesn't happen, and well, there is no, you know, way forward.
Yeah, and Nita, I think that's quite important what you're saying, is that because we don't know that we're hijacked,
Mm.
you just go into that mode, and I think this is why I say that I'm fortunate that I was able to recognize it, and I was also able to recognize the specific saboteur that got hold of me.
And how did you recognize that? Would you say you recognized it, you know, through physical sensation, or, you know, if you could describe that might be helpful.
That's going to be a difficult one to describe because I actually don't quite know what happened at the time. I can just think back on it. But when I say it's physical, it was very much an emotional frustration. So you can actually say that it's physical because it's the brain actually notified me. So it really was that. Um, and it was that, you know, when you get into, well, this is how I respond, is that you almost feel like you're trapped in a situation, totally trapped. And it was that entrapment I needed to get out. That's why I said I went outside. And it was almost that moment that I realized the moment that I got outside, you could hear the birds singing. It's almost like you could smell the roses, if you may. You know, suddenly you realize, hold on, what are you doing to yourself or to anybody else here? Because I was getting annoyed and I was not being short-tempered. And he said, cheek, just slow down. And it all worked again. Yeah, so I don't think it was a physical thing that I felt, but it was that feeling trapped in the situation.
Yeah, that is helpful as well. And then that you were able to say, I actually need to take a pause here and go outside.
You see, Anita, and there's something else that also happened in that whilst I was busy doing this, is that the moment that it has been triggered and you knew, and I recognized that I was hijacked, thereafter it becomes so easy. Because then every time that I would get a little bit frustration or something, or I don't know what to do next, it is really just immediately just I would actually take a piece of wood and just feel the texture. Okay, so I'm working with this wood. It's almost like I'm having this conversation with the wood, you know, and you feel the texture. You don't think about anything. You put it down and you continue. It's like the mind has gone in that time. The creativeness has found the solution that you have. And if you don't find the solution now, it's okay as well. Because you're gonna eventually it'll come.
And the other thing that's interesting about that as well is how you spoke about, well, obviously, in order to access that creative part of your brain, you needed to flip the switch from, you know, the rational part of your brain. And in order to do that, you mentioned feeling, you know, even the wood, or like that, listening to the birds outside.
Yeah.
And that allowed your brain to switch. But then the other interesting thing that you mentioned was the yes and game.
Yes, the yes and thing, and obviously I didn't do the yes and game with my wife because she was playing part of it. It literally happened the yes and what she's saying is valuable, and then around that we worked it all out. So the yes and was something that I think what the yes and game, even if you, the yes and is the idea is always that somebody else is at least 10% correct. Now, in this case, my wife was 100% correct because it didn't matter if it was 1 centimeter short. You know, it's it's like she said, it would have been a bigger problem if it was 1 centimeter too long because she works within a very limited space, which the exhibitor, the organizer puts down. That would have been a problem. If it's a little bit shorter, it's fine. And how much are you really losing? But you also have that ability in that time when you do the yes and is somebody else is right and hear from it. And that actually creates the moment that you go into, well, the other person is right to a degree, whatever it is, it immediately gives your own you start exploring that, and from that you become innovative on how to do it. Whereas where I was, and I just have to put it right to where we started with this conversation, when I was hijacked, what can I do? I don't have this, I can't do this. So I'm just thinking, and you know, it's the logical thinking brain was 100% correct. I can't go to the shop to go buy anything. I know that I'm going to have electricity failure soon. You know, all of those things are realities. But how do you overcome that?
Yeah.
And is to not try and use the thinking brain and use the sage component where there's innovativeness component. And the big thing for me was to go into action. All the others, to me, I think that was the biggest wow moment, was to not let all of this, the facts that's on the sheet, prevent you from doing what you have to.
Or at least getting started on it.
Yes, yes. And it doesn't matter if it's not done totally.
Yeah, that's absolutely key, isn't it? Because then that wouldn't prevent you because you're like, okay, this is what is, and I'm going to do what I can.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it'll be what it'll be, and I will finish again later if I need to.
Yeah.
And the message that so although I'm this was the hyperachiever thing that caught me, it is not the stickler. You know, so it's something different. It was totally different. It wasn't that I'm trying to rethink everything and I have to have everything perfect, and because I'm never going to be perfect when I do this. So that to me was okay. And I know that I have to do some stuff afterwards to neaten it up. And I'm always amazed at how people that actually do this for a living, how good they are to get things right. And to me, that has never been the problem, that I wasn't going to be able to. I have to mention something though, which is quite important, is that when I started the build, Marina wanted that, so my wife wanted to get somebody, she was suggesting to get somebody else to make it. And one of the things that I said to her is that if it's not right, we're going to be upset. Let me do it, because then we can't be upset with other people. We can just be sort of acknowledge that it's ourselves. Guess what? I catch myself out that I'm upset with myself. So. But that's okay. Yes, and even there, it was a way to not get caught out with all of it. And at the end of the day, once you've done something like this, and even now it's standing there, it's halfway done, or a third rather. You know that it's something that you created and it's there, and it's that creativeness.
Yes.
Really, really, and keeps you busy. And even in the time when I started trying to think through all the problems when we had the electricity failure, that was not sitting and moping about electricity, but it was actually thinking and you being creative. And that helps to reduce the anxiety as well. And I'm using the word anxiety because you can get there's an anxiety around this. And you're being creative. So therefore, the time just goes on. And the 2 hours just turns into a time space and not 2 hours. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. that reference to time, and because when one is in that hijack mode and when one is in that sage mode, time is definitely we're definitely having a different experience of time. Would you like to speak more to that, either of you, please?
It's true. It's like when you're in the sage mode, really time doesn't really it's the word I'm trying to think. You're not really aware of time as such. It just is something that's, you're just working or you're doing whatever you're doing. Whereas when you're in that hijack mode, very aware of time. Because I think as Eddie says, like if he was in the hijack mode for that 2 hours when his electricity was out, he'd be watching the clock and going, when is it going to come back? Very aware of time. But when you're doing something or you're in that sage mode or you're creative, it's like time just doesn't really exist as such. And you can look at your clock and kind of go, oh, an hour is gone. Where did that go? Like that would be my experience of it.
Yeah, they've actually found back in after the First World War, a lot of people were unemployed, and they found that in that state when you are not, you say you're really unemployed. So really in that time, what people would have is that a month would feel like a year, but a year could feel like a month. If you can actually turn them around, because life just goes past with nothing. Whereas this is something else, because you're actually being creative, and time doesn't matter. It's the same thing. You asked me what type of picoreps I did initially, and that was the birds. And then I said, listening to the sound of the birds, and I intended just to walk out, and it took a couple of minutes, and it didn't matter. So you don't even realize time. You're right, Bridge. You go into where time doesn't really matter because you're busy doing whatever it is that you do.
And sometimes it takes a bit of time to get into that, even with the PQ reps. I just noticed, because I was doing some work at the weekend and I had huge resistance to it. But after a short length of time, I really experienced this. I was doing it, and it was a creative piece as well. Well, not with my hands now, but on the laptop. And I just got that sensation of, I went, oh my goodness, that time has just gone, because I was in it, not thinking. But it didn't happen straight away. I needed to get over the initial thing of, I'll say the word, like making myself get started, getting down to it, which felt very uncomfortable, even though I had done the PQ reps and I had been outside. So I felt I had done all those things and still was uncomfortable. But it was amazing, after a short enough period of time, I got into that state, and then the time didn't matter after that. So it sometimes it takes a little more than just doing what we would call PQ reps. It's also doing it and still going on, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but that was just my experience of it. And the time, literally, I remember looking, I was going, oh my goodness, it's that time. And it was just that an hour had just, to me, it felt like 5 minutes. Just flitted away, but I hadn't flitted away. I actually had been creative in that time. But whereas the time before that felt like it was like I was watching the clock all the time. So that's my experience of it.
Yeah, and what that reminds me of is that state called flow, that's been researched and described over time, that, you moved in to that state of flow where, everything else just fades into the background.
Yeah.
You're fully connected and focused on whatever the task is at hand. And you're feeling the benefits of that for hours afterwards. That's the other really valuable part of accessing that state, is that, for hours afterwards, because of the way that your biochemistry responds to it, it's a very, what would you say, uplifting or renewing experience for your whole system. access. And it's interesting to, again, to bring that in, that again, PQ is helping you to access that state.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been chatting quite a while on this. I would like everybody, if there's any suggestions or any help, or your own people that listen to us today, your ideas or your examples around this. So how you're going to get, the whole idea is how you are being sabotaged or hijacked by something, and what it is that you could do, and how through that, how they actually become something that's quite amazing, which is called calm and feeling a sense of achievement. If they could just share that with us.
Yeah, and I was going to say also that we might just share a link as well for people to find out more, because I was conscious we were speaking about different saboteurs and people may not know the context of those in that positive intelligence, program. So we may share the link to even the saboteur survey, so they could, which is a free survey, to find out what saboteurs may be active in their lives at, in a catchment of time.
Yes. And if any of those people would like to want any more information, just to contact, because both Breege and Anita can actually help you to go through a program like that if you're interested. Okay. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to us. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.